we had discussed previously the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and their offspring, the Rephaim, and how this seemed to be part of the reason why the flood was necessary. Right?
So wait, I'm sorry. So these Rephaim are related to the Nephilim?
Well, yeah, the Rephaim were the offspring.
These the ones right there?
Yeah.
Because this was after the flood.
Of the angel. That's what we're getting at, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just a little ahead
That's
of
the
you.
problem. You are. So, yeah, the question right now is, how are they here again? Didn't we just kill them?
Didn't we just kill them?
I thought we did. Only 8 people were left over.
Uh-oh. Hey, yeah. So, I mean, I doubt one of those 8 people was the Nephilim, right?
Well, it would seem not.
Unless.
Well, there are theories.
Let's hear them.
There are theories. I think there are 4 theories.
All right, let's hear them and I'll decide which one is correct.
All right. The first theory is that these Rephaim are also the product of fallen angels sleeping with the women of men, but it was from after the flood. So the angels said, I mean, we're celestial beings. We're not dead. Let's go do it again.
Yeah.
So one could say, you know, if we did it once, we could do it twice.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so the flood didn't really cure the problem at the root.
Yeah, we didn't hear that they were like obliterated or anything, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Boy, that sounds kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Sort of like a failed flood situation.
Well, like where's the foresight by God, you know?
Yeah, you expected that if you put this plan together that it would be executed and you'd get the result that you're hoping for.
When you're God, yes. And
right.
When you destroy the entire population on Earth.
Yeah, you don't do that on a whim. You usually want to make sure that whatever goal you're hoping to achieve gets achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, the theory here is that there was a continued sexual union among the angels and the women. Now, this seems to be a concern even to Paul.
Say that again. I wasn't listening.
the theory, Dan, is that there's a continued sexual relationship among the women and the angels.
Okay. Sure.
And this seems to be alluded by Paul even when he's writing to the church in Corinth.
Oh, what?
So I know. So
that was back after Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me more.
So in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, there's a discussion about women wearing head coverings, right? Remember to cover the hair.
Yeah.
And Paul has a little bit of a situation trying to justify why women need to cover their hair.
Right.
And it's mostly to do with authority. But he does put in a really interesting statement at the end of all of his reasoning in 11:8-10. It says, "For man is not from woman, but woman is from man. Nor was man created for a woman, but woman for the man. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head on account of the angels." Now, this is a seemingly, nothing burger of a passage until you realize that, especially in the Greek and Roman cultures, the female hair was considered to be a part of the female genitalia. So we think of women having kind of 3 sex organs. There's the vagina, the breasts, and the hair. And that was, this is going to get really interesting here. Mm-hmm. So they thought that they were scientifically advanced. And one of their scientific reasons in the Greco-Roman culture for why women had to have long hair was they believed that the hair was actually hollow. And they believed the hair was hollow and it actually drew a vacuum from stuff inside of the body. And they believed that when you inseminated the female, her long hair actually enabled the semen to be taken up into the body. It actually acted in unison with the other sexual organs to aid pregnancy. And so because of some of the interesting beliefs in the Greco-Roman culture, there were a lot of rules and regulations for what women could and couldn't do with their hair because it was perceived to be of a quasi-sexual nature to show your hair. And so what's being suggested here is that one of the reasons women should be covering their hair, especially while they're in church, of course, while the angels are ministering, is to not be a temptation for the angels.
That's nuts.
That's pretty wild. Now, there's a little bit of conjecture in there.
I would hope so, because that's.
But if we conclude that reasoning is sound, then we would have to conclude that Paul was aware that the women and the angels were having continued, sexual relations after the flood.
Mm.
Now, the second theory, the genetic line theory, this interpretation suggests that while the flood was meant to destroy all the living creatures on earth, including the Nephilim, or their offspring, the Rephaim, some of their genetic material may have survived through Noah's family, but they weren't giants, right? However, here's the catch. According to this view, it is possible that the wives of Noah's sons who entered the ark with them might have carried the genetic traits associated with the Nephilim, because the theory here is that if the women carried the genetic traits, maybe the women that were birthed out of the union of the women and the angels, they carried the genetic material with them, even though they didn't have the same physical anomalies as the men. They weren't born a race of giant warriors because they're women.
There weren't female giants? Female Nephilim?
According to this theory, no. The Nephilim, or the offspring of the Nephilim, the giants, as it were only men. So the females actually could have been containing the genetic material of the Nephilim, but you couldn't actually tell from the outside that they had the genetic material or that they had a parent that was a fallen angel.
That's crazy.
Right?
Okay.
Now, another theory, which, because in the time of the exile and the post-exilic period, there was a great focus, a renewed focus on the scripture and trying to explain some of the unexplainable parts.
When was this?
When was what?
When the focus was on explaining the unexplainable.
Well, I would say probably 400 years before Jesus came is when you saw lots of intertestamental writing, lots of Talmudic writing, lots of other types of Jewish teaching on the scripture that tried to explain some of the weird parts of scripture.
People actually had questions about that back in the day?
They did.
I assumed they just nodded their head.
What? No. There's lots of questions. And in fact, we read in the Talmud a really interesting section. So this is Zevakim 113b. The Gemara replies, "And according to your reasoning, that it was impossible to survive the boiling water." First of all, there was a theory that the water of the flood was boiling. But we're not going to focus on that. That's just important for what we're reading right now.
All right.
"And according to your reasoning, that it was impossible to survive the boiling water, how did the ark itself move? It was covered with pitch, which melts in boiling water. Moreover," this is the important part, "moreover, how did Og, king of Bashan," see Numbers 21, 33 through 35, "who according to tradition was one of the generation of the flood, stand and survive the boiling water? Rather, it must be that a miracle was performed for them, namely that the water was on the sides of the ark, cooled, allowing the ark to remain and Og to survive." So the theory is that Og, who is described in the Bible as the last king of the Rephaim, the king of Bashan. So we read in Deuteronomy 3:11, "For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants." The theory is that Og actually held onto the ark during the flood and somehow clung to the boat for however long it was, at a minimum 100 and something days, and survived the flood on the outside of the boat. I think obviously this is the least likely
Yeah.
answer to this particular riddle.
It's weird that was that Numbers and Deuteronomy both mention some guy named Og, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes when you tell me stuff like this, I get this feeling that we're never actually going to know the truth, you know?
Well, I mean, we're only in the first couple of chapters of Genesis.
So it gets easier?
I don't know if it gets easier, but we're going to get more information, and that information is going to fill in the cracks.
So pretty soon I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember Og.
Yeah. Og, king of Bashan.
Yeah.
He was 9 cubits in length, 4 cubits in width. And, he was a big, big boy.
Of course, they mentioned that for some reason.
Well, they're emphasizing that he was a giant.
Oh, well, I thought that was obvious if these are the last of the giants.
Actually, I apologize. His bed was 9 cubits in length.
Oh.
I'm not really sure how tall he was, but
How much is 9 cubits in American
I think that's
measurements?
9, like, wrist to elbows.
Is that like a foot or something?
It's a cubit.
Oh, wrist to elbow is a cubit?
Pretty sure.
Oh. All right, what's wrist to elbows to feet? Okay.
We're talking about cubits, not English measurements.
Well, we're trying to...
We'll convert it to furlongs later.
Oh, okay.
That'll make more sense. Nevertheless, the question remains, what in the world are these giants doing after the flood, and why are they not dead? And we've had...
Didn't you say there were 4?
Yeah, so I said there was 4.
Okay.
And the reason why I said there was 4 was because I misspoke.
Oh, okay.
I've only got 3 right
I was
here.
waiting for the 4th one.
Actually, the 4th is the one that's going to be supplied by the viewers in the comments that are going to explain why we're completely wrong and they're right.
Nice save. All right.
Absolutely.